In August 2000, after an argument with her then boyfriend, 19-year-old Bianca Blömeke disappeared without a trace. She remains missing until today. A body was never located. A possible manslaughter would now fall outside of the statute of limitations. But that's exactly where her mother, Erika Schneider, does not want to give up hope. Now, the perpetrator, or alleged accomplices, could confess without having to fear criminal prosecution. In today's video, I want to tell you about Biancas disappearance, so that this case is never forgotten. Bianca Blömeke was born on September 6, 1980. She grew up as an only child and lived with her mother and her then husband in Essen, Germany. Bianca has always had a close and good relationship with her mother and the entire family. The family belonged to one of 3 large motorcycle clubs in Essen, and Bianca's mother, Erika Schneider, ran a bar where some of the motorcycle enthusiasts liked to hang out after a day on the road. Bianca, who had started nursing school, often helped her mother out at the bar on weekends. The small establishment was particularly busy during soccer games, and so every helping hand was needed. The guests loved the young, bright and fun-loving woman. In the summer of 1998, Bianca ended up meeting Sven. The two quickly fell in love and became a couple. Erika Schneider was not particularly happy about her daughter's relationship because she didn't like Sven from the start. She still accepted Sven and welcomed him into the family though, because she didn't want to tell her 18-year-old daughter who to date, and she did not want to stand in the way of her happiness. However, Bianca and Sven soon started arguing a lot, with arguments escalating increasingly over the next month and years. They were both impulsive people, which is why it often didn't take much for them to blow up and accuse each other of all kinds of things, leading to even more fights. By the way, that doesn't mean they were a happy couple, even if it wasn't for the fighting, at least not according to Bianca's mother. Bianca got pregnant in the spring of 1999. It was important to her to stay with Sven for a child's sake and have a happy, or at least functioning relationship, because Bianca had experienced what it was like to grow up without a father in the household, and that she had suffered a lot from that situation. So she decided that her own child should have a father and a mother. But when Bianca was 9 months pregnant, an explosive fight took place between the two, during which Sven kicked her in the stomach. This was the last straw for Bianca, and the 19-year-old ended the relationship. In December 1999, she then moved out into her own apartment. In January of 2000, their son was born. Bianca allowed Sven to visit them in the apartment, despite of the continued fighting, so that Sven was able to have a relationship with his son. But the conflicts between them didn't stop despite of the breakup. Once it was so bad that Bianca called her mother and said that Sven refused to leave the apartment. When Erika drove to the apartment and wanted to talk to him, he was so irate that he hit her in the stomach with the metal pipe of a vacuum cleaner. Bianca then called her mother's partner at the time, who came just a few minutes later and threw Sven out of the apartment. But the peace did not last. Throughout the following days and weeks, Sven continued to write letters to Bianca, through which he tried to win her back. Dear Bianca, I am so sorry. All I want is to have a happy family with you and the little guy. I don't want things to be like they were between our parents. Do you know how happy I was when we were talking about getting married next year? Please stay with me. You are the only one for me. I'm just so scared that you won't love me back. Love forever, Sven. Even though they never got back together as a couple, Bianca gave in after that, and she let Sven spend time with their son again on a regular basis. Biancas disappearance. On August 5th, 2020, Bianca spent the evening at her mother's bar. There she met with one of the regulars, whom she had stricken up a friendship with over the past year. The two had so much fun that night that they decided to go to another bar afterwards. That's why Bianca ended up contacting Sven to ask him to watch their son for a bit longer, since she was going to be home late that night. Sven agreed. Erika Schneider warned the young man to take good care of her daughter, and the pair called a cab. Prior to getting into the car, Bianca said goodbye to her mother and told her that she loved her. In the morning of the next day, a neighbor saw how Bianca got out of the car together with Sven and their son and went into their house. Only a few hours later, around 2:30 p.m., Bianca contacted her mother. There had been another fight, and her daughter once again wanted Sven to vacate her apartment. She said that she never wanted to see him at her place of residence ever again. Erika then told her that she had to make another phone call and that she would call her back immediately afterwards. When she did that almost an hour later, she only reached Sven. He told her that Bianca wasn't there right now and that she should try again later. Around 4:30 p.m. the same day, Sven rang the doorbell of Bianca's grandmother's apartment. She lived next door and babysat her great-grandchild on occasion. Sven appeared nervous, handed the child over to her. He claimed that he had been fighting and that she had to talk it out with Bianca without any distractions. He then proceeded to the elderly woman that he would pick his son back up in the evening. And that's exactly what Sven did a few hours later. However, he told her grandmother that they were unable to make up after the fight because Bianca didn't return to the apartment as promised. He claimed he was waiting for her all this time, but to no avail. Erika attempted to call her daughter all day long. However, Sven was the one to pick up the phone each time. He told her that Bianca was unable to come to the phone because she was taking a bath. The next time, Erika was unable to speak to her daughter because she supposedly went to the corner store. Sven practically took over Bianca's apartment. When Bianca's grandma stopped by to check on things, she noticed that he had managed to turn the apartment into a dirty mess within the matter of a few hours. Sven himself just sat by the window staring out into the street. He claimed that Bianca was out with friends. Once he was supposedly heard saying, "Bianca just drove by again." Bianca's grandmother wasn't too worried in the beginning, so she decided to clean up her granddaughter's apartment a little to simply help her out. She started in the bathroom. When she was just cleaning the bathtub, she made a shocking discovery. There was little fresh blood left in the tub, but she simply assumed that maybe Bianca got her period while taking a bath. Around 11 p.m, Erika tried to call her daughter once again. But again, Sven was the one to pick up the phone. Erika thought that it was weird, but she still wasn't all too worried yet. That changed when Erika went to Bianca's house on Monday. Sven opened the door for her and told her that Bianca took off and left him. Her passport was gone, according to him, but her keys, her cell phone, as well as her wallet were still there at the apartment. Erika Schneider didn't believe that her daughter would just pick up and leave everything, especially not without saying a word. If she got overwhelmed, then she would have at least called and told her that she was going away for a few days to clear her head. But she would never leave her child and her family without saying anything to anyone. Erika then went to the guy's house that her daughter had been out with the night before she disappeared. He was visibly surprised and assured her that Bianca was not at his house, and that he also hadn't heard anything else from her since they had said goodbye to each other that night. Together with a friend, Bianca's mother printed black and white flyers to help find her daughter. Looking back at the situation, Erika regrets not calling the police right away. But on the other hand, it wasn't like she could have looked into her daughter's head. So she was hoping that her daughter simply went to stay with a friend to get away after a fight with Sven. Even though Essen's motorcycle clubs didn't typically get along too well, they all came together to help. They drove around handing out flyers all over the city, but with no luck. Erika Schneider's ex-husband drove around looking for Bianca, but they almost had to force Sven to participate. When there still wasn't any sign of Bianca 4 days later, Erika notified the police. But unfortunately, she was not taken very serious from the start. When she explained what had happened, the police woman literally laughed at her and said, "19 years old sometimes just take off." Investigators simply assumed that Bianca had run away. Nevertheless, they still searched the apartment, the attic, and the basement at her apartment house, but without any results. In her helplessness, Erika Schneider contacted the media and gave interviews to draw attention to her daughter's disappearance, because she didn't trust that the police was going to get involved. Even Sven gave an interview. In a short video, the young man sat on a sofa and said into the camera, "Bianca, if you're listening, please come back. Our son needs you." Some time passed, and due to the fact that Bianca did not return, even the police were starting to believe that a crime had taken place. About 1 week after Bianca's disappearance, Erika asked Sven where he had buried Bianca. When she asked this, she was half joking, but Sven just handed his son over to her and left without saying a single word. She didn't hear from him again and took care of her grandson over the next few weeks. On September 7th, Sven attempted to withdraw money from Bianca's bank account. However, he entered the wrong PIN number 3 times, which deactivated the card. On September 20th, 2000, about 6 weeks after Bianca's disappearance, Bianca's grandma ran into a neighbor. She told her that on the day of Bianca's disappearance, the pair could be heard arguing loudly. According to her, she heard Bianca crying, followed by a loud bang. The neighbor was then invited down to the station to make a statement, during which she said, "I heard a loud bang, then Bianca screamed, 'Please, please, don't do it.'" She supposedly cried that out in desperation about 3 times. This is when homicide detectives were put on the case. On October 27th, about 11 weeks after her disappearance, crime scene investigators combed through Bianca's and Sven's apartment. They tested carpet fibers, swapped furniture, as well as the floor and the tub, but their search turned up absolutely nothing. Blood was no longer detectable in the tub, and cadaver dogs also didn't find anything. However, it is worth mentioning that Bianca's landlord wanted the apartment cleared out, which was why Erika had already started removing the first pieces of furniture. If the search had taken place right after Bianca's disappearance, it is possible that the investigators may have been able to uncover evidence of a crime, but that is mere speculation. On December 7, 2000, a criminal complaint was filed against Sven for manslaughter. The investigations against him went on for months after that. His phone was checked, and all nearby embankments and waterways were searched with cadaver dogs. No trace of Bianca at all. On May 2, 2001, Sven was then arrested and interrogated. This is the statement he gave. "We got back to the apartment. I had written a letter to Bianca. We had a heated discussion that turned into a full-blown argument. The baby started crying. Bianca went to take a bath. I tried to calm him down with a bottle. She came out in loose, comfortable clothing and a towel wrapped around her head and sat back down on the couch. We argued even worse because she wanted to break up. The baby started screaming again. Bianca said to bring him over to her grandma's house. That's exactly what I did. When I came back to the apartment, Bianca was gone. I called her and thought that maybe she went out to get smokes. She wasn't on the balcony either, so I went down to the corner store and then to a friend's house. Then I used her cell phone to call around, but wasn't able to track her down anywhere. So I picked my boy back up. Since there was no incriminating evidence against him, Sven was free to go. The investigation no longer had a main suspect, and the charges were dropped. But to date, the investigations into Bianca Blömeke's case have not led to any results. To this day, it is unclear what happened to Bianca on the day of her disappearance. August 2020 marked the 20th anniversary of Bianca's disappearance. This means that a possible manslaughter is now outside of the statute of limitations. Witnesses, accomplices, or even the perpetrator himself could now easily come forward without the fear of being prosecuted. There is hope that after all these years, the case of Bianca's disappearance may finally be solved. Bianca's mother, Erika Schneider, lives alone now. She moved to the area surrounding Bianca's old apartment. This is where Erika grew up. She can see her daughter's old apartment building from a living room window, which makes her feel close to her daughter. She wants nothing more than to find out what happened to her daughter back then, to get closure, and be able to grieve for her daughter. She needs to know what happened to her, so she says. In the last few years, she has spent any red cent she has to get closer to the truth. At this point, I want to thank Erika Schneider, who authorized the use of Bianca's photos for today's video. And this brings us to the end of today's video. If you liked this clip, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up and leave a comment. With only a few clicks or a couple of keystrokes, you have the ability to really support this channel tremendously. Thank you so much in advance, and I also want to thank you for watching. We will see you for the next video. Good night and see you soon.